Cool. And now we go back to Netflix and Friends and various streaming platforms, and I'm going to talk about a film called Duo. And I mentioned earlier about how when you say duo, like if sometimes people are saying, are you saying dual or are you saying duel? And I think that this is done on purpose in this film. It's done on purpose in this film because, like, there's a dual meaning to duel, so to say. Because this film stars Karen Gillan, and it's in a world in which what happens is if you have a terminal illness, you can get a clone. You can get a clone that looks exactly like you, and you can train the clone to do everything that you do, so that when you die, the clone takes over from you, and then your loved ones are spared the pain of you dying, because they won't even realize you've died. They won't even realize you've died. They'll just see that, as far as they're concerned, you just continue carrying on because you've gotten a clone made that sort of replaces you. Kemi, it's okay. Okay, don't worry. We'll look after it. I'll kiss it better in a second. And so Karen Gillan stars this woman who takes this up because she finds out that she has cancer. And she has a boyfriend, she has a mom, she's like an only child. So she gets the clone, she starts training the clone up to take over her place, and then she realizes that she gets told that her cancer is in remission. And so because the cancer is in remission, that means that she's like, okay, cool, I don't need the clone anymore. But the clone is now here, and the clone wants to stay. And the wrinkle is her family prefer her clone to her. So you fixed it. Oh, well done, Kevin. Well done. Can you take it back to the bookshelf? Thank you. So the thing is that her family prefer her clone to her, and the law is if a clone wants to stay around, there has to be a duel, so a duel between the clone and the original person to the death, and whoever wins gets to live.
Wow.
So it's at short. I think this is one of those films where I think the guy who made this film is kind of like, he's not Wes Anderson, but you know how people talk about a Wes Anderson film. He has a very particular way of making his films where everybody speaks in this really, really deadpan way, and there isn't much emotion in it or anything like that. And you have this absurd situation where her boyfriend thinks her clone is better, her mum thinks her clone is better, and wants to keep them. Yeah. So. But they have this whole world. But the fact is that as long as the clone is around before the duel, she has to pay for the clone. So she has to pay for the clone. She has to keep the clone's upkeep, pay for the rent, pay for the food, all that kind of stuff. So and then they give them a date, and they say this is the date that your duel is going to be on. So she has to go into training, and she goes into training, and she gets trained by a character played by Aaron Paul. Thank you. She gets played by a character played by Aaron Paul, and he's like, he trains people on how to do this fight, and he's like, okay, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna take a thing out. Remember that they're just like you at all. And a lot of the film becomes her training, but training in this very, very, it's kind of like, it's almost as if Wes Anderson did a Rocky montage of training. It's very deadpan. It's very kind of like, oh, it's kind of like, are we actually gonna do this or not? And then there becomes a bit where her clone and her start developing a relationship, and to say anything else would be to give a spoiler as to actually what happens. But the film builds towards this duel that these two people are going to have, whether it's between the clone and the original, to see who's going to hang around. And it is weird. It is weird, but it is if the synopsis of the film or the basic idea of the film tickles you, you are probably gonna like this film. That's what I would say. You're probably gonna like this film. It's on Sky Cinema, and it ends in a very kind of like probably I'll say existential place. But I think I actually quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed it, but at the same time as I was enjoying it, I was thinking some people are not going to like this. This is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But I think there's enough in it to make it enough people's cup of tea. So all in all, I would give Duel. I think it sneaks into a 4. Duel sneaks into a 4 for me because I actually quite enjoyed it, even though it was very mannered.
Is it like that? Any similarities between? I think it was called. There was that Michael Keaton film, wasn't there? Was it called Duplicity?
Multiplicity. Yeah. It's no, it isn't. I mean, okay. It has a central thing of there being a clones. I think in that one is the guy who he decides that if he clones himself, he can get more time because he can have a clone that does this, a clone that goes for dates on his wife, a clone that goes to work, a clone, and so that he can. But this is different. This is just like she's trying to she's trying to relieve her family the stress of her not being there, and then she realizes that the family didn't particularly like her anyway. The people in her life didn't particularly like her anyway, and they prefer the clone. So yeah, I would give Duel a 4 out of 5 on Sky Cinema. I would say go see it. And now we go